It was a sunny afternoon on June the 27th, 1976. Air France Flight 139 took off from Tel Aviv. The plane was bound for Paris. It carried 248 passengers and 12 crew members. Many were Israeli citizens, others were from various countries. The mood was light. Travelers chatted and settled in for the long flight. The first leg of the journey was uneventful. The plane landed in Athens for a scheduled stop. New passengers boarded. Among them were 4 individuals with a sinister plan. They blended in with the other travelers. No one suspected their true intentions. The plane took off again, heading for Paris. About 20 minutes after takeoff, chaos erupted. The 4 new passengers sprang into action. They were heavily armed. Guns were brandished. Demands were shouted. The hijackers had taken control of the aircraft. Panic spread through the cabin. The plane was no longer heading to Paris. In Benghazi, the situation grew tense. The hijackers refueled the plane. They released a pregnant woman. Then they took off again. The new destination was Entebbe, Uganda. The choice was strategic. Uganda's leader, Idi Amin, was known to support militant causes. The hijackers believed they would find a safe haven there. During the flight, the terrorists made their demands clear. They wanted the release of 53 militants. These were held in prisons across the world. Israel, Kenya, France, and West Germany all held prisoners the hijackers wanted freed. The demands were steep. The consequences for non-compliance were dire. The hijackers threatened to kill hostages if their terms weren't met. The passengers endured hours of fear and uncertainty. The hijackers separated the Israeli passengers from the others. This act heightened tensions. The non-Israeli passengers were eventually released, but the Israelis and the crew remained captive. On June 28th, the plane landed at Entebbe airport. The hostages were herded into the old terminal building. Idi Amin arrived to welcome the hijackers. They believed time was on their side. The old terminal at Entebbe airport became a prison. The hostages were confined to a single large room. Conditions were cramped and unsanitary. Food was scarce, water was limited. The hijackers maintained a constant watch. They were aided by Ugandan soldiers. Idi Amin had thrown his full support behind the terrorists. Days passed slowly for the captives. Fear and uncertainty ruled their lives. The hijackers set a deadline. They threatened to start killing hostages if their demands weren't met. The clock was ticking. Every hour brought more anxiety. Some hostages tried to keep spirits up. They sang songs and told stories. Others retreated into silent despair. The terrorists separated the hostages again. Israelis and Jews were kept apart from the rest. This segregation was chilling. The non-Jewish hostages were released in batches. They were flown to Paris, but 106 passengers remained. Along with them were the Air France crew. Outside the terminal, a tense standoff developed. The hijackers showed no signs of backing down. News of the hijacking spread quickly. It dominated headlines worldwide. Governments scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were called. The United Nations Security Council convened. Diplomats worked around the clock. They sought a peaceful resolution to the crisis, but progress was slow. Israel took the lead in negotiations. They had the most citizens at risk. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin faced a difficult decision. Should he negotiate with terrorists, or should he take military action? The stakes were incredibly high. Any wrong move could cost innocent lives. Rabin's government engaged in talks with the hijackers, but they also began to consider other options. Other countries offered support and advice. The United States pledged assistance. France, as the owner of the hijacked plane, was deeply involved. Kenya, despite initial reluctance, eventually agreed to help. But Idi Amin's Uganda remained a wild card. Amin's erratic behavior complicated matters. Diplomatic efforts continued day and night. Proposals were made and rejected. The hijackers stood firm on their demands. Section 5. Israel's secret plan, Operation Thunderbolt. Behind closed doors, Israel was preparing for the worst. Military planners worked tirelessly. They devised a rescue mission. It was audacious and highly risky. The plan was codenamed Operation Thunderbolt. Later, it would become known as Operation Entebbe. The mission seemed almost impossible. Entebbe was over 2,500 miles from Israel. It would require precise planning and flawless execution. Israeli intelligence gathered crucial information. They interviewed released hostages. Every detail about the terminal's layout was noted. The number and positions of hijackers were estimated. The involvement of Ugandan troops was factored in. Satellite imagery was studied. Models of the airport were built. Commandos began rehearsing for every possible scenario. The rescue force was carefully assembled. It included elite soldiers from various units. The Sayeret Matkal, Israel's top special forces unit, formed the core. Air Force pilots trained for the long-distance flight. They would need to fly low to avoid radar detection. Paratroopers and infantry were added to secure the airport. Medical teams prepared for potential casualties. Every aspect of the mission was meticulously planned. Time was running out. The hijackers' deadline was approaching. Operation Thunderbolt was a go. Section 6, the daring raid begins. On July 3, 1976, 4 Israeli C-130 Hercules transport planes took off. They carried 100 commandos and all their equipment. The planes flew low over the Red Sea to avoid radar. The journey was long and tense. Every member knew the risks. The planes landed at Entebbe airport just before midnight. They used the same route as commercial flights to avoid suspicion. The first plane carried a black Mercedes resembling Idi Amin's car. The commandos sprang into action the moment the planes touched down. They moved swiftly and silently. Ugandan guards were fooled by the deception. The Israeli commandos were already storming the building. The rescue operation was underway. Section 7. Commandos in action. The rescue unfolds. The initial assault was swift and effective. Commandos burst into the main hall. They shouted in both Hebrew and English, "Stay down, we're Israeli soldiers!" The hostages were confused and terrified. Some thought it was another terrorist attack. But relief spread quickly as they realized rescue had come. The firefight was intense but brief. The hijackers were overwhelmed. They had no chance against the highly trained Israelis. 3 hijackers were killed in the first moments. Others were hunted down as they tried to flee. Ugandan soldiers outside the terminal joined the fight. They were quickly suppressed by Israeli forces. The sound of gunfire echoed across the airport. Yonatan Netanyahu, the operations commander, led from the front. He was hit by sniper fire early in the assault. Despite his wounds, he continued to direct his men. His courage inspired the entire team. As the firefight died down, the focus shifted to evacuation. Hostages were quickly gathered and led to the waiting planes. Section 8. Mission accomplished, hostages freed. The entire operation lasted only 53 minutes. It was a testament to meticulous planning and flawless execution. Of the 106 hostages, 102 were rescued. Sadly, 3 hostages lost their lives during the firefight. One elderly hostage, who had been taken to a hospital earlier, was later killed by Ugandan troops in retaliation. The rescued hostages were quickly loaded onto the planes. Many were in shock. They could hardly believe they were free. As the C-130S took off, a sense of elation spread. Cheers and tears of joy filled the aircraft. The impossible had been achieved. They were going home. The flight back to Israel was tense. Everyone knew they weren't safe until they landed. The planes stopped in Nairobi, Kenya to refuel. The Kenyan government had secretly agreed to help. When the planes landed in Tel Aviv, they were greeted by jubilant crowds. Families rushed to embrace their loved ones. Section 9, Aftermath and International Reactions. The success of Operation Entebbe sent shockwaves around the world. Israel received widespread praise for its audacity and skill. Many saw it as a turning point in the fight against terrorism. The mission showed that terrorists could be defeated. It gave hope to nations grappling with similar threats. Not all reactions were positive. Uganda and its allies condemned the raid. They called it a violation of sovereignty. Idi Amin was furious. He ordered the killing of hundreds of Kenyans living in Uganda. This was in retaliation for Kenya's role in the operation. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency session. Heated debates ensued. Some members wanted to condemn Israel for violating Uganda's sovereignty. Others praised the rescue as a justified act against terrorism. In the end, no formal action was taken. The lack of consensus reflected the complex nature of international law and counter-terrorism. Section 10, Legacy of Operation Entebbe. Operation Entebbe left an indelible mark on military and counter-terrorism strategy. It became a case study in special operations. Military forces around the world studied its planning and execution. The mission set new standards for hostage rescue operations. Its success inspired similar operations in the years that followed. The raid also had significant political implications. It boosted Israel's reputation as a nation that would go to great lengths to protect its citizens. This image of strength and determination became a cornerstone of Israeli foreign policy. It also reinforced the country's commitment to the principle of never again, a vow to prevent another Holocaust. For many, Operation Entebbe became a symbol of courage and hope. Books were written about it, films were made. The story captured the public imagination. It showed that even in the darkest moments, brave individuals could make a difference. The commandos who carried out the mission became national heroes. Their legacy continues to inspire new generations. Operation Entebbe remains a pivotal moment in history, a daring mission that changed the world's approach to terrorism and hostage situations forever.